If you're a B2B business, a B2B tech company, or a B2B marketer, you're in the right place. Coming to you from Studio 26, this is the Interesting B2B Marketers Podcast, bringing you interesting contemporary takes, industry tips, guest interviews, and true stories from B2B marketers in the trenches. Now, here's your host, Steve Goldhaber.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Steve. I am your host of the Interesting B2B Marketers Podcast, and I'm excited for today's episode. All right, Akash, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what makes you tick.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, my name is Akash Pathak. I'm a growth and digital transformation specialist. I've been working in the industry for 20 years plus. I've been focused at that intersection of growth and transformation. What that really means is that companies are looking to grow their business, look at how they can grow their business. They're also trying to transform capabilities, to modernize their capabilities, and then that's where I come in. So I've had the pleasure of working for Fortune 50s, some smaller companies. I would say the last 7-8 years I've been more in a head of marketing roles, leading the total business. And before that, I was really more focused on digital.
All right, nice. I'm going to describe you as a Renaissance man. You are not the old marketing archetype. You are the modern Renaissance man when it comes to marketing, and especially growth marketing. That's a great area to be in. I mean, I feel like when we started in marketing years ago, it was just like, we do ads. We're the ad people. Come talk to us if you need an ad. All right. So as we always do on the podcast, we are going to jump into case studies. So the first one you're going to take us through, this is healthcare, and we're doing a little bit of brain surgery in healthcare because this is all about getting inside the minds of the customer and figuring out some insights about kind of how do you make your marketing campaign a little bit more impactful. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's always a lot of different opportunities where you feel like growth is stagnant. And this is a great example of that, where in this healthcare business, targeting a specific B2B customer, revenue was increasing, but not at the rate that other businesses were growing inside the firm and outside the firm. So some of the competitors were gaining better traction. This was a situation where they wanted to go deeper inside the mind of their target, but didn't know how, right? And didn't know what it took. And so some of the proposals we came up with were actually like sitting down with that customer in their living room and understanding their lives and where this brand could play a role. Now, I will say that the success of the program, once we got through it, was great because we were able to uncover a lot of new insights, understand what role that brand could play, and that we actually got, the budget and the team momentum around developing the digital content that we needed, but also the sales engagement that we needed to really drive it full. So the result was the next year when we put this in the market was really, really positive. And it was a combination of segmentation from those insights, but also the sales team being behind what we were trying to do. Some of the key insights we found is that this target really is inundated, like we all are. Sometimes we just don't see that we're all inundated with content, ideas, business needs, patience in this case. And that can be overwhelming. And so some of the insights that we found is how can we more integrate ourselves into their lives with bite-sized content and then also enable the sales team to come and bring that to life. I will say that one of the hurdles that we really found is that you have to describe what this investment can do. Because if business is good, but not amazing, sometimes there can be pushback around, why should we even invest this time and money to do this? So that was one of the big learnings I had, not only the project in terms of what it was able to do, just organizationally, how do you kind of think about that and help people understand that there could be a benefit at the end of the road?
Yeah. Tell me, where do these, first of all, I love these projects, right? Where you're trying to get closer to the customer. Where did this one come from? Was it our marketing efforts are falling flat? Was it a top-down thing from leadership saying we don't know who we're talking to? Where did it come from?
This one was interesting because the idea of getting close to the customer came from, a collection of people on the team, myself, a couple other people. And the challenge that was out there was initially just, we're not growing as fast as our competition. It was a market research meeting where we looked at our competition, we looked at our other portfolios of business, and we're like, this one's just not growing as fast. I wonder why. And there's some interesting insights at a very high level on the target. And we're like, okay, well, that's interesting. So we had a debrief after that. We started to talk about it and think about it. And some of them came up with a pretty innovative glean more insights. And then we're like, well, that's interesting. But then we asked the question, what would we do with that? Do we even, we don't want to go into management and say, we're just going to get these insights and then they'll sit on a shelf. We want to go in and say, okay, if we got those and invested that time, the money wasn't that big, right? Getting insights wasn't a huge proposition money-wise, but the time was big. It was a big time investment. You're flying out, you've got people out of the office for a long time, spending time on this project. So then we said, okay, well, we need to have an idea of how we'll make it actionable at the end. And then as we kind of developed that, once we talked with management, they're like, this seems great. Like it's a no-brainer because the worst case is it doesn't work, right? But
Yeah.
if we keep doing what we're doing, we're in the same boat. So they're like, okay, let's try this. Like, thanks for bringing, a new idea to us. And kudos to the person internally who was like, let's just reframe this a little bit, because if we go out and do market research through survey, we're going to get what we got. If we do this, where we sit in their home, their office, observe, just get a little bit deeper, we might get some new stuff. And we're like, yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's very like anthropomorphic research where I've done so many focus groups behind the mirrored glass, and you can learn a lot from them, but there's always this like element of the person being paid to do the research almost wants to perform, where it's like they're just telling you what they think you want to hear. But when you actually go and do the observation, is it participant observation? That's probably like the research term where you actually get in there and follow these people around. I feel like it's not as safe probably for the research folks because many of them are just very comfortable in doing the predictable. But I do think you can get better insights when it comes to this type of research.
It also helped get some specific channel insights, which we didn't think we would get. So for example, the actionable part that we had thought about was how will we action on it? We had said we would ask about different, how do they engage with salespeople and channels? And we did get some good insights out of that we're able to then go and use very tangibly for a media plan, email content, sales teams. So that was nice. We had sort of know that we had to get some of that, but you never know what you're going to get sometimes, from customer insights. But we knew we had it on our list of interviewing of different questions we wanted to ask. And so that was a really nice thing as well.
How long did this whole process take? Well, I mean, after you got approval to do it, how long?
The investment, the actual research probably took about 2 months. It took us about, I would say, 4 weeks to 6 weeks to really get our brains around it and figure out how we would use it. So I would say about 3 months.
It's not bad. And were people at the company doing it, or was this a third party who kind of helped you guys pull it off?
We ended up talking to a couple of third parties. We talked to a couple of third parties because it felt like a little bit different than, what you and I talked about, which is a focus group behind the mirror. And so we found a couple of third parties that were, I guess, just more innovative. They're more about getting a little bit closer to the customer, and they helped us pull it off for sure. They're a huge partner. They're a huge partner on gathering the insights and just helping generate some great ideas for us as well. Sometimes you need a little bit of outside in to just spark some ideas. And so it's one of the cases where, again, going back to the business problem, it was fairly stagnant. And so just needed some fresh thinking to change it up a bit.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for sharing the first case. We're jumping into the second one. I like this one because I work with a lot of different clients and I always get to be an observer of the sales and marketing relationship barometer. I've seen it all. We don't know where the salespeople even sit because we don't talk to them ever. To no, I do ride-alongs. I actually every now and then go on a sales call and see what it's like, right? So give us some background about the industry. Case study number 2.
Yeah, I love that. I think we could talk about this a lot, so it'll be fun. But yeah, I mean, it's sales and marketing relationships, and they run the gamut, as you know. And it is important as leaders for us to create some congruency between the teams, collaboration between the teams. That's part of the job of leaders. And obviously, this example is really point the arrow at how we win. And so I would say the business situation here, it's similar to what I talked about before, which is growth was not awful. It wasn't declining business. It was a growing business, but there's a question about where do we invest to grow it even further? And so again, in taking a look at the industry, this one felt like it could grow more. Some of the other contexts is there were a lot of changes in leadership for this team. So it's actually, good and bad. Good in the situation of, hey, we can take a fresh look at different things or run a different analysis, or gives us an opportunity to rethink things. Bad in the sense that, as a lot of changes happen in management, sometimes you have to make sure that you're getting the mind share on different opportunities as well, because there's a lot of different things that they want to tackle and they're assessing the business as they come in. So for this one, they've been classically classically focused, not classically, I would say, but pretty classically focused on like just digital and sales, connecting with these customers, setting up appointments through different content, through different products and services that we had that would help them. And then sales would come in. And there was a decent segmentation model there around where's the big opportunity, doing some, historical analysis on where are we getting, some traction, what types of businesses are we getting traction with. I think one of the challenges there really was like when this new leader was asked as they came out to run this business on the operations side and working with me on the marketing side, question was, where do we invest? What do we invest to kind of grow this even more? That posed an interesting question for myself. I worked with one of our consulting agencies on this and some of the internal teams as well in data and analytics. And we thought, okay, well, we don't know whether you invest in this digital component or the sales component because we don't know the combination of the two and we don't know the power and we don't even know like frequency, for example, and so we have some correlation on, hey, it's working. We're seeing some stuff happen. Some sales come through for these different segments and we're focusing on these segments or we're refreshing those segments and getting more customers in those segments. So we said, why don't we take a step back and say, if we can put them together, look at the historical data, let's find some insights. So it started there. And then basically we kept peeling that onion. More insights came through. Then we found out, oh, okay, like we can actually get to, salesperson should talk to this person 3 times. And that's because we know they've engaged with this type of content with us before. And so we're like, well, that's really interesting. That becomes a whole model, right? Of now we're forecasting. We don't even have to look back in history. So that gets to the new leader's question, which is where do I invest? The other thing it came to was, looking outside our company, we knew people are investing in events or conferences and other things. So we said, okay, well, if we carved out 10% of this budget and said, we want to try new things, we know this works, which is this model that we created, but we also need to try new things because that'll get new people into this model through content, relationships, et cetera, thought leadership. And then maybe that we can run that through the model as well to see where it goes. So like maybe there's a 10% carve out from an investment perspective, and we see if the return is the return. So it was, honestly, it's like, when you're on the consumer side and you see that frequency analysis, but on the B2B side, what's really cool is like, to your point about sales and marketing, you're kind of like, all right, I got to triangulate both of these. And I actually felt like in this case, the new leadership in sales, because sales had a new leader at that point as well, was actually really open to this. So like, this is great. This helps us triangulate where I can focus and maybe I can get more, some of the ideas they had were like, maybe I can get more precise with my training around talking points against this, right? Because this area is not as powerful as the top area. So that became a really rich conversation. And frankly, it helped bridge the gap between sales and marketing. But, I think at the end of the day, sales and marketing are always going to have a little bit of healthy tension. And I think that's okay. I think it just keeps us honest. It's like, it is what it is sometimes, we'll have beers off work and then at work, we have to kind of like challenge each other a little bit.
So I want to jump in on a word that I really like that you just used, is triangulate. And I think that's such a powerful word in describing sales and marketing. It reminds me of a similar engagement where the sales and the marketing folks didn't really know what the opportunity was. And one thing that was really apparent was the marketing folks actually said, hey, we know all this engagement data on how people are consuming content when we push it out. And what we figured out was that sales, and this was a renewal business model, so every 2-3 years, these accounts would renew, there was a correlation because the salespeople had shared all their success rates with us. And you could see people who indexed high on content consumption renewed high and low renewals, right? So what was really interesting is that the marketing programs weren't just seen as like a demand or awareness campaign. It was actually a sales intelligence program where you could tell the salespeople, hey, we've triaged your accounts into like 3 levels, essentially like a green, yellow, red stoplight system. And we could say, these clients appear to be trending not to renew. So something's going on there, jump in. Or, hey, these other clients are really highly engaged, like don't offer the promotion or a discount in a procurement-led process. So it's fascinating when you can triangulate some of those things.
I like that example. I love the yellow, like starting to trend, in a direction that we don't love. I love that one. I think you can always focus on growth, right? And sometimes we're like, well, but what about this yellow? and maybe the red's fine. You kind of let it go. You don't have resources to do everything. But I love that example. It's a good one. And I think that's the power of a relationship between sales and marketing. If you can just get to these simple constructs, I feel like that's what gets the wheels going, because they're after the same thing that marketing is after, which is growth. But, you've got to find some simple ways to sort of get everybody, after those goals.
All right, awesome. Let's jump into the get to know you part of the podcast. My first question is, tell us about your first gig in marketing, and you can go back as far as you can. We've heard childhood jobs, entrepreneurs, so wherever you want to take us, tell us about your first gig.
That's funny. Yeah. So I got into marketing almost as an accident. I had my college background, I'll start with very shortly. I started off in computer science, went into English. So I did a big radical change there. I just realized one day I didn't want to be a software engineer. And so then having an English degree in English literature, it's sort of what are you going to do? You can teach, obviously. And so I had looked into pursuing a PhD or a master's. And then one day, a lot of my computer science or my engineering college roommates and friends, they're like, you should come to this consulting event. I'm like, I don't know. Okay, sounds good. So I went to a consulting recruiting event, ended up becoming a consultant, which was, I don't know how that happened. They're like, okay, you might be able to put some proposals together. You understand, at the time, obviously digital is not blowing up yet, but it was it was where some smart people were like, that's where the future is. So I actually started off as a consultant. I did a lot, as I said, a little bit of new business. Then I started working on actual implementations, and I worked there for a long time, almost 5 years. And then one of my clients came to me and said, you want to take a role full time? And I said, sure. So all my work really as a consultant got really into e-commerce and marketing really quickly, because that was the world of digital at the time. You were essentially trying to figure out the early days of marketing. So whether it was email, websites, some of the first paid ads, creating affiliate deals with, brands that are huge now. I'll give you a funny story. The points guy, he's not going to remember me, but I literally remember texting him on his phone to create a CPA deal, right? These were the things that we were trying to do back then.
This is the airline reward point guy?
Yeah. Yeah. And now he's owned by...
Yeah, I was going to say, he's made some good money selling the company. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's good. But anyway, yeah, so that was my start, is that, I brought this performance mindset into marketing. I had an English background, so I was able to do some of the creative side as well, the brand side. And that was my start, and I really enjoyed it. And once I started doing it about a year or two in, I was like, this is what I want to do. And then I went and pursued a master's as well, part-time, because I was like, let's just double down. This is the career. So that was how I started. Funny story.
That's awesome. I remember in the early, digital age, I'm going to probably say, let's just call it 2000. I remember really getting hooked into oh my God, it's going to be so amazing. But in the early years, I remember constantly you battle between this can be done, this is so exciting. And then when you went to execute, technically things weren't as advanced. So you find yourself in a program where you're like, this software is broken. It's not working, right? And it's funny how today, it's rare that you find yourself in a position where you can't execute a program, where before it was well, yeah, we could execute this, but what do you do to factor in AOL email addresses? That's a separate campaign to the AOL address. It just was you just got to a point where you're this isn't going to work. This is too hard to execute. But yeah, everything is pretty easy today from a technical standpoint.
Got a lot better, but you're right. It was wild, wild west. And I think that's kind of where AI is. There's some things that work really well. And then the more I play around with it, I'm like, this doesn't work that well,
Yeah.
So now that everybody's added it to everything, I was on Canva and I'm like, why? What is this generating for me? This doesn't make any sense. So nothing against Canva. Awesome platform. But, I think there's still some work to do as everybody rolls out their beta AI.
One of the funny stories about kind of the beta AI is a local car dealership threw on ChatGPT is their service bot. There's obviously a role for that, but the way that they had implemented it, it was just an out of the box installation. So this guy starts negotiating the price of a car, and GPT agrees to sell it to him for $1. And he's like, "No, I have a contract with this company. You guys have to honor it." I was like, this is amazing. Like, or there's another one where the bot is like, hey, can we help you find a car today? And he's like, actually, can you create some Python code? I'm trying to build this. And the bot goes, sure, here's your code. It's just, it's just those early fun, call them quirks or hallucinations about AI. All right, let's jump back into, this is a little bit of a hypothetical here. It's Monday morning. You get to cancel every meeting and you say, I can do whatever I want this week. From a marketing perspective, what are the things that get you really excited that you would say, I could do this all week long?
That's a great question. I mean, I really love working with other people to find like new opportunities. So, like you always think something's going well. And I always think there's something that you could probably change up and do slightly better, right? If you get like 2 or 3 people, smart people in a room, take a look at some different analysis or run analysis and come together or just think about something. Some people hate analysis, like actual numbers. And I respect that. I think that then they bring a lot of other, really tangible benefits to the table. I think that's really rewarding. I think, just taking a look at things and saying, let's rethink this and find some new opportunities. And it's just you're striving for success, right? You're trying to get better at the game. So I like that. I think that's really fun. I think that, other aspects are, I always enjoy, when teams are really energized around an idea and like following that momentum. So like, sometimes you get in rooms and people are really, really energized. And so that's always fun. That's like a really exciting part about marketing is there's ideas or business momentum that gets people really energized. And so it's fun to be a part of that. I'd say those are the two.
I like that. What's a pet peeve of yours as relates to marketing? Like, what's something that you're just like, the industry's got to fix this because it's just been driving me crazy for too long?
Oh, gosh. I mean, the industry's kind of crazy, right? I mean, one of the things I think is, well, let's take CES. I don't know if it's a pet peeve, but I've been there maybe 2 or 3 times, I think. And I think it's a great conference, but it's also just like chaos. You know what I mean? And I don't know, sometimes I don't know I know when I came home from it, I was like, okay, I'm really excited about all this stuff, but I don't know how I would use it. You know what I mean? So I understand how from a consumer electronics perspective, it's awesome. But as a marketer, I think it's good to see where things are going, but I just don't know, how tangible it is. When I get back to work, I feel like people are still struggling with like their funnel and, sales and marketing, connections. And I feel like that's the reality of work or, fixing a brand, or I don't know if CES is like, it's not helpful, but I don't know if it's like that tangible, which is fine. Like if it's a great big party in Vegas for everybody and marketing wants to get involved and go, but I mean, look, I don't know if it's like a massive value add. So
no, I think some of it also is the conference circuit. And when you get tired of South by Southwest, you're like, we need something new. This looks new and it's definitely cool. But like to your point, you're not looking at ad platforms there. Like you're looking at products, and maybe there's a way to get, some type of partnership in, but they're product folks. They're looking to launch big things. All right, I'm going to jump over to another topic. We're both in the 20 plus year marketing club. And over the course of our careers, you get to look back at the people that you work with or that you hire to understand, hey, that person's a great marketer. So this question's more focused on like, what are some of the themes or patterns that you've seen looking back to say, when people are looking for talent, this is what it takes to be a really effective marketer?
It's an awesome question. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's someone who really gets the fundamentals of marketing and understands business impact. So there's so much right now. I like the AI noise. I think it's great. There's so much noise around different things happening in the industry. But then you meet people who are like, look, we need to put down what's the insight? How are we going after it? How are we going to measure it? And those are the people that I think win above and beyond. And I think their ability to sort of instill confidence in others around them around that they're going to march it through that process and come out on the other end sharing how they did. Those have been the marketers that I've hired that I love, and they've done really, really well because they get the fundamentals and it's second nature to them. And everybody around them is just, if they don't know the fundamentals, they're learning from them. They're seeing them, basically just drive right through the process. They're using technology. They're understanding it. They're being innovative. That's not the core of what they do. do. I think some of those marketers are almost like those big rocks, driving really, really good results right now. I want to caution that with saying, like, what if someone is working on the edges, right? What if someone is working on innovation? What if someone is working on something specific? Marketing has gotten so broad, and I think that's right, where you can have a data scientist, you can have a media ad tech expert, you can have a content expert, creative, et cetera, all these different functions. But for, the things I do, which is, you're generally in a seat where you're trying to just drive the whole bus forward, those are the type of things that I've been really excited about. I would say the other capabilities or other talents, I've seen a lot of people thrive in those as well. Different characteristics, right? The people who are like super duper innovative, let's pick on that for a while. I love them because they're almost like what we were talking about before. They're thinking about, okay, this thing is bugging me about the business or a process, or I heard about this technology and I just want to keep poking at to see if there's something there. And that's great, right? Like you need that because it's just going to freshen things up a little bit. That goes back to the case study that we talked about, which is this individual that we tapped and we're like, hey, this feels a little stagnant. What do you think? And through the course of several conversations, he's like, what if we tried this? And we're like, that's interesting. And as we dug into it, we ended up loving it. So those things are good. But, to your point about, I guess a general marketer, those are the things I look for. Fundamentals through the noise, ability to bring people along in a really clear way. Those are great.
All right. We're going to end on a theme that it could extend this podcast for 10 hours. So we're not going to do that. But the question is AI underhyped or overhyped as it relates to the world of marketing?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's definitely a 10-hour question. Let's call it properly hyped. I think it's wild, wild west right now for AI. Like the reports from CES are really funny because I think they put Chat GPT in a bike, an electric bike, like they're just like, everything's got AI. They're just like, whatever, just put AI in it. And there's no form or function to it. It's like, what are you going to do on the electric bike? You're going to be like, hey, I really need I don't know. I don't know what generative AI is going to do to the bike, right? It's not like a useful function. I think car manufacturers have put it in as well, and it's like, that's intriguing. But so we're in this state of it's helping people sell, frankly, you know what I mean? Because it shows you're innovative. So even in our business, if you talk to let's say you're thinking about working with a technology in the media space or creative space, whatever it is, they're going to throw out AI. And they're going to say, we have it embedded. Now that creates a lot of tension because as marketers, we're trying to figure out, well, is that true? Or is that smoke and mirrors? Is that actually going to work? And if you do have AI, I need to understand what it's doing to actually propel something forward and create an impact, whether that's get more relevant with the customer or optimize, without me having to, turn the dials. So I think it's properly hyped. I think it's been, when you look at the research, it's been in development. Generative AI has been in development for 10 years. DeepMind, other companies have been working on it for a really long time. I think it's finally had its time of day. I think we have to be careful with a lot of people saying, I've got AI now, I'm awesome, and think very carefully. And then I'm not going to name vendors, but when you look at the history of AI, some vendors in our space, marketing service providers on the technology end, have had AI integrated for several years. And some of them have actually been able to separate from others by leveraging that AI in a real way. So I think we have to be careful with the hype of all this stuff is here. It's like, well, just look back and say, yeah, there are actually a couple of things that have actually already been in development where they were 2-3x stronger than the standard protocol, right? And so that's great. And now as we get into this new wave, we're like, great. Okay, great, put ChatGPT in your electric bike, have at it. But is there a real use case here that I can actually test out and think about that's going to drive a real, that's getting back to the foundation, right? Is it going to create more relevancy with my customer by rapidly creating new creative versions with them? Is it going to help me synthesize insights so I don't have to have 3 data analysts crunching numbers? Instead, they can just look at insights and serve those up at a faster rate. That's powerful.
Thanks for tuning in to the Interesting B2B Marketers Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss an episode. If you found value in today's episode, please help grow the podcast by sharing with others and leaving a review. We'll see you next time.